Creepy pizza delivery experience. Here's my creepy pizza delivery story from college. When I was in college, I got a job delivering pizzas late at night. Typically, I would work until about 2 a.m. It was a shitty job and the shop was extremely dirty/unsanitary and falling apart, but I typically made really good tips, so it was worth it. I was 19 at the time, female, and it's summertime in CO, so even at night it's still fairly warm. Important detail for later. This was my second weekend on the job, so I was still getting used to it, and I'm already a paranoid person, so I preferred just dropping off the pizza, taking my tip, and then leaving right away for the next delivery. I pretty much never went inside the person's house, and if I did, I would just step inside real quick, but leave the door open. It was pretty close to midnight when I got a delivery to a house on the east side of town. It was supposed to be my last delivery of the night. I pulled up to the house and it looked pretty normal from the outside. The street was really dark, but I didn't feel uncomfortable. I walked up to the door and knocked. This big shirtless old dude with a beer belly answers the door and tells me to come inside. I got weird vibes from him off the bat. I declined to come in and tried to just give him his pizza right there. But then he goes, "Come inside, it's freezing out and we don't want the cold air coming in." This didn't make sense to me as it was summer. So stupidly I get nervous and I take one step inside his house, not going all the way in though. Then he goes, "No, come all the way in, it's cold out." I should have left at this point, but I was freaking out, not thinking straight. So I went in and he closed both the screen door and the main door behind me. I'm trying to calm myself down, telling myself I'm overreacting. He then yells to his wife that the pizza's here. I can see her in the kitchen cooking, which seemed weird that she ordered a pizza, but was also cooking. Ick. I look around their living room, and it is filled to the brim with stuffed animals, completely covering the couches, tables, windowsills, everything.
It gave me a really weird vibe.
Then his wife comes into the living room holding something outstretched in her hand. She walks up to me, and I see that it's some kind of bread/cake. She goes, "Eat this banana bread, and don't worry, it's not poisonous."
WTF.
I try to politely decline, lying and saying I'm on a diet. She just stares at me, still with her hand outstretched, waiting for me to take the bread. I don't take it, and then she gets really upset and starts yelling at me to eat the bread. I decline again, but this time I'm not trying to be polite, and I tell the couple that I really got to get going back to work. I'm still holding the pizza too, and thinking about just running out the door at this point. She gives up on trying to make me eat the bread and walks back into the kitchen. Then the man is like, "Let me find some change for your tip." He starts looking all around the living room, digging through the couch cushions trying to find change to give me. I tell him to forget it and that I don't need the tip, that he can just take the pizza. But he insists on finding a tip for me. He spends the next several minutes searching his stuffed animal-infested living room for change, and I start to think to myself that they're trying to stall me. Most people have the tip ready when I get to their house. I was so worked up at this point that I just tell the dude I'm leaving and start to open the door. He took his pizza and gave me a few quarters that he found. I booked it out of there and went back to the shop. I told my supervisor what happened, and he didn't seem to care. He just sent me on another delivery, uneasy face. I was pissed. I don't know if that couple was actually creepy or just really socially awkward, but I never delivered to that house again. Thanks for reading, smiley face. He tried to open my door. This happened when I was 17. It's worth noting that I'm a 5 feet 3 inches female. To give some background, I was mostly raised by my single mom. When I was young, my mom worked the graveyard shift and left me in the care of my older sister overnight. My sister was really rebellious in her teen years and would often have sketchy friends and random guys come over when she was supposed to be looking after me. There were even a couple of guys in their late teens to early 20s who tried to make a move on 9 to 11-year-old me. My mom and I were left dealing with the aftermath of having these creeps and weirdos knowing where we lived long after my sister got her act together and moved out. Suffice it to say that I had a lot of anxiety towards strangers for a long time. So, fast forward 5 or so years, and it's just me and my mom, who no longer works overnight, but still works until late at night and about an hour drive from our house, meaning that I was generally alone from the time I got home from school until 11 p.m. or later. During this time period, I would occasionally order dinner from one of the local pizza joints. No big deal. As previously noted, I was pretty freaked out by strangers in general, and especially strange men. I would call in my order, then put the money, with a generous tip, in an envelope and tape it to my front door with a note saying something like, "Sorry. Had to step out. You can leave pizza/sandwich/whatever on the porch swing.
Keep the change.
Thanks." Then quietly work on my schoolwork and pretend like I wasn't home so I didn't have to answer the door. I know. I realize this is kind of really very creepy behavior on my part, but I was more okay with being awkward than I was with someone who might be less than savory, knowing that I was home alone being easy prey. Also, I was a dumb teenager, so there's that. Now, this procedure typically allowed me to get an easy and delicious dinner while remaining safely anonymous and secure, so I figured it was a win-win. Until one evening, I ordered my food, put my note out with the money, then settled on the sofa with the book I'd been reading to wait for my dinner in silence. After a while, I heard a car pull up out front and heard footsteps on the porch followed by a brief knock on the door. This usually happened before the delivery person would spot the note/envelope. From my seat on the couch, I can see the shadowy outline of the delivery guy. I assume it's a guy based on height and build through the small frosted window in the front door. He opens the screen door, takes the envelope off of the door, and closes the screen door. There's a small amount of movement, but it seems like it's taking an extraordinarily long time, and he's still standing there. I'm puzzled and a little concerned at this point. How long does it take to read 2 to 3 sentences, count the money, and put down the pizza? I mean, take the money, leave the food, and have a good night. After another minute of this person just standing outside of my door, my heart is pounding. I know he can't see me through the window. I haven't moved or made any noise to raise suspicion. So, what is going on? A few more seconds go by, and then it happens. He slowly opens the screen door and knocks on the front door. Again. After a few seconds, I expect to hear the creak of the closing screen door, but instead see the doorknob turning. In that second, I feel like I'm about to have a heart attack. The knob only turns a little as it is, thankfully locked, but he still tries to turn another couple of times before letting the screen door slam shut and finally, walking off of the porch. I sit there totally stunned until I hear a car door slam, then I bolt to my bedroom to peek out the window and try to get a look at this dude. I can tell it is a man, but otherwise can't make out any defining features. Not that it matters, obviously. It's not like my profound social ineptitude would let up enough to allow me to call a pizza place and say, "Hey, your delivery guy tried to open my front door while I was pretending to not be home like a giant weirdo, but I guess I just wanted to check for sure that it was someone from the restaurant and not some other random person who came knocking and took my money. It wasn't." My food was on the porch when I finally recovered enough to retrieve it, which was some consolation, but I was still severely creeped out knowing that this guy was just like, wonder if they locked the door or whatever. I'm 36 now, and I still get a little freaked out thinking about that day. I also get very anxious when someone knocks on my door. I just wonder what that guy's deal was. Creepy man outside my apartment complex area. I have been in my own apartment complex for 2.5 months now, and I live on the top floor. Things have been going well, and it's good being on my own. It was late at night, and I was hungry. Usually I cook my own meals, but I was in the mood for some delivery. So I pulled up Uber Eats and ordered a pepperoni pizza. It would take about 20 minutes to get there. It wasn't long before my Uber Eats app said that my driver had arrived outside. It was chilly, so I took my light jacket and headed downstairs from my apartment complex to outside. My driver wasn't there. Sometimes the driver goes around back to deliver my food instead of using the front entrance, even though I tell them to use the front entrance in the delivery instructions. Frustrated, I headed to the parking lot outside of my complex, which takes about a 40-second walk to get to, while passing by some other apartments. Then you turn left, and you're in the large parking lot. To give a picture of the parking lot, there are large dumpsters where people take out trash, back entrances to apartments, and a pool complex. Anyways, I went looking for the driver at the back entrance of my apartment. I couldn't find him. Getting even more frustrated, I turn around to go all the way back to the front entrance of my apartment. I had forgotten my phone anyways, so I had to head back to call him anyways. But when I turned around, that's when I saw him. Across the street from the parking lot, there was a tall, Lanky black man in a dark hoodie and baggy jeans, smoking a cigar. He was just standing there, just staring suspiciously, eyes locked onto me. Something about it was just unsettling, especially since it was almost pitch black outside. Then, with his eyes 100% still locked to mine, he started crossing the street and coming towards me in a very curious but unnerving manner. I had a feeling he was going to try and trap me in the parking lot, possibly to mug me or do who knows what. So I had to think fast. As he was crossing the street, I quickly cut through the grass back to the path of the front entrance of my apartment. And I barely managed to cross paths with him as he finished crossing the street. Then I quickly walked back to my apartment, looking behind me to make sure he wasn't following me. Before I went back inside, I turned around, and there he was about 10 feet away, eyes locked on me staring suspiciously while smoking a cigar. 2 minutes after being back inside and making sure I caught my breath, I called the driver telling him where I'm at. And he delivered my food to the front entrance outside. Fortunately, the creepy man was nowhere to be found. Some people may think I was being paranoid, but better safe than sorry. Stalked on social media by an Uber driver. So this happened a few years ago. I was 23 at the time and lived in a big city. One of my friends messaged me saying he needed someone to talk to. He has severe PTSD, he's a Marine and had IED explode while he was in the field. A bunch of the metal shrapnel ended up in his arms, chest, and neck. I had him call me, he was having a really bad day. His mother had passed away the month before, and his ex-wife was being a bitch. He asked if I could come over, and that he would pay for the Uber there and back. I talked to my husband, and he was okay with it. The ride to his place was normal, it was the ride back that was creeped. After we talked for about 2.5 hours, I basically talked him into getting help. He talked about wanting to kill himself. I told him that he has so much to live for he has 3 kids. He got another Uber so I could get home. The driver seemed really nice at first. He introduced himself, and I did the same. Then he asked me how my day was. Just normal conversation. He then asked if I was married and if I had any kids. I told him yes, and that I had 2 kids at the time. The conversation got a bit more creepy. He started asking if I was happy with my marriage and if my husband was pleasing me sexually. He then started to say that he could please me better. I asked him to not talk to me like that. After about 15 minutes, he finally pulled up to my old apartment complex and dropped me off. I went up to my apartment and told my husband about what happened on the way home. He asked if the Uber driver was still in the parking lot, and I said no. We left it at that and went to bed. The next day I get up and my day starts off normal. I make my kids some breakfast and put on cartoons. I sit down on the couch and check the notifications on my phone. I had a friend request from the Uber driver on Facebook. I never gave him my last name. It's not a very common last name. I deleted the friend request and went about my day. A few hours later, I get another friend request and delete it again. Not long after that, I get a message on Facebook and it's the Uber driver. I didn't read it and deleted it. About an hour later, I start getting follow requests on IG and every other social media that I use. I deleted the one on IG, but not the one on Twitter. I messaged him on Twitter telling him to leave me alone. Sadly, it didn't end there. He kept on with the friend request till blocked him on all of my social media accounts. He contacted my friend after that asking for my number. My friend told him no and to leave me alone. I had told my friend about what the Uber driver was doing and he reported him to Uber. Thankfully, it ended after that and I never heard from him again. I know it could have been a lot worse than it was if he knew what apartment I lived in. I'm really happy he didn't since my kids were 2 and 3 at the time. Why I quit delivering food. I've been dash delivering for a few months now and enjoy the freedom of not having a boss order me around. I can play whatever music I want in my car and take jobs I want and skip the ones that tip poorly. I'm not saving much due to gas costs, but I am saving and I was enjoying seeing new places and meeting new people. That changed after I received a notification for a $150 paying delivery. Immediately, I swiped accept and then pulled over to read it. I first expected this to be some out-of-state delivery to some rich individual longing for some Michelin-rated specialty. I regretted not checking the distance first, and after reading the address, I found it was a bit out in the sticks, but still very much worth the easy $150. I sighed with relief and pressed the GPS button to bring up the map to a restaurant named Danny's that I'd not previously heard of. The sun was setting early, as it does in October, and I had my lights on by the time I made it to a less populated corner of town where the restaurant was apparently located. Dinner brings the best tips, but I hate driving at night since it's harder to find restaurants without a boldly emblazoned logo lit up in neon. That, and I've always harbored some lurking fear of a delivery-turned mugging, or worse, some gang-initiated killing. Rare as it is, it has happened. You have arrived at your destination, the soothing voice of the GPS alerted me. I slowed to a stop, confused. I was on a dark, residential street. No sign of a restaurant in sight. Where Danny's was supposed to be was a dark gap in between two homes. I checked it again, even typing the restaurant name into maps outside of the delivery app, but nothing popped up. I realized then it might have been a glitch. In retrospect, $150 for a 30-minute delivery sounded too good to be true. I sighed and began searching the app for the troubleshooting menu when a loud slap on my passenger side window caused me to jump in my skin. A man stood outside my car, his hand pressed against the pane. I rolled down the window, only a crack, just enough to hear him. "You the delivery driver?" he asked, and my mouth went dry. I didn't want to say yes because the vision of a pistol pulled and a muzzle flash kept playing in my mind. But he seemed harmless enough, older too. Mid-50s, receding hairline, thin frame. Not quite the gang initiation type. I was fairly certain everyone knew that delivery drivers nowadays don't carry cash. "Yeah, I'm looking for Danny's restaurant. Is it near here?" The man just looked at me with a hollow stare before raising his other hand. The fear of an impending bullet to the brain immediately dissipated when I saw a large plastic bag. I sighed out in relief and lowered the window, accepting the delivery. It was large, much larger than I was used to delivering. I typically receive a styrofoam container or two, a drink as well. This plastic bag contained a stapled paper, one filled out nearly to the top. I needed to use both hands to accept it. I placed the surprisingly heavy meal on the passenger seat, staring at it for a moment before looking up again. "Thank you." My words tapered off as I realized the man was already a few yards back. I watched him disappear into the shadow-filled gap between houses. I have no idea where he was going or where he had come from. Dark curiosity led me back to the app to see what I was even delivering. My confusion only heightened when I read the order. Danny's, it simply said where cheeseburger, fries, and the like would typically be listed for me to check off upon pickup. Despite the questions that kept tugging at my resolve, $150 for this awkward delivery was the overpowering factor. I swiped the slide after pickup bottom bar to continue the delivery. The GPS once again popped up, and I stared at the large green areas encompassing the pinpoint. My insides squirmed a bit at the revelation. The delivery address seemed to be dead in the middle of the woods. I shifted into drive and followed the directions onto the highway. The sun had fully set, but the tunes from the radio had kept me in good spirits. Few people were on the road, so I was making great time and could call it an early night after this gig. The miles counted down from 15 to 10 to 5. The off-ramp came into view, and the large pine trees on either side of the highway continued to darken the path as I merged onto smaller roads. With every mile further into the wilderness, my uneasiness grew. More than a few times, my eyes darted over to the suspicious double-bag delivery on my seat. My heart raced as my mind played tricks on me in the shrouding darkness of the tall trees on either side. I did a double take when I thought I saw the bag rustle. Something within appeared to have moved. The last turn on the GPS signaled for me to take a left. It was a turn off of the paved asphalt road and onto a dirt road that cut into the woods. I slowed to a stop and double-checked the app, praying there was some sort of mistake. On occasion, the wrong address was listed. No luck, however. My destination was half a mile into the dense wall of pines. I took the turn and slowly drove into the dark tunnel cutting through the arching trees. I could barely see the sky through the dense copse overhead, just darkness broken by the limb-like branches. With each rocking of the chassis and each bump in the narrow dirt road, that heavy bag on the passenger seat seemed to rustle. I fixed my eyes on the road, deciding not to look at it after I began to hear a faint noise emitting from the stapled inner bag. A noise that sounded like a faint wheezing. By the time I arrived at the destination, my knuckles were white from gripping the wheel so hard. I was sweating despite the autumnal chill that had breached my car and clothing. This part of the woods seemed colder than any part of the drive by at least 10 degrees. I shifted into park and looked at the app screen, the only source of light aside from my headlights, which faded only a few meters out. The address was supposedly on the left, and the instructions read, "Leave at door." There was no house in sight, however. It had to be a glitch of sorts. Above all else, I didn't want to leave the safety of my vehicle. This entire delivery had been all wrong. Something dreadful about it made me crave a shower. It made me want to run screaming from the situation I'd unknowingly gotten myself into. Crinkle. I saw the bag shift in my peripheral vision, and I let out a glottal yelp. I hurriedly opened the car door and got out, eager to distance myself with whatever was in the bag. I then navigated the menu of the app on my phone screen, seeking out the cancel order option. My score would go down. I'd miss out on the money, but I'd be able to get out of this strange gig that I wanted nothing more to do with. I was about to press confirm on the cancellation when I spotted the door. A few meters to my left, illuminated only faintly from the light of my phone's screen, stood a door. It looked ancient, its thick wooden beams bone white from petrification. The design was archaic, something that belonged on the side of a medieval European church. Black steel hinges and latches ornamented it, but the most noticeable feature was the one it was missing. The door was housed in a frame of charred, black beams, but aside from that, it wasn't attached to anything. I stared at the structure and felt my heartbeat quicken. Dread and curiosity battled within my scrambling mind as it tried to register what this door was and why it was out there. I took a few hesitant steps towards it and felt the hairs on my body rise. With every step towards the detached door, the temperature dropped. I stepped around the unnatural thing to peer behind it, and sure enough, there was nothing behind it but endless trunks of trees. I'd made it this far, and I just wanted to get my money and get out. With a few deep breaths, I returned to my car and opened the passenger door. With 2 hands, I lifted the heavy delivery, which shook in my shivering arms.
It moved.
Something gasped and gurgled from within, but I continued carrying the parcel over to that strange door. My teeth chattered from the chill as I placed the large bag on the dead leaves in front of the door. I took a photo to verify the delivery, then swiped to complete it. And with that, I rushed back to my car and got inside as quickly as possible. I then heard the faint cries of an infant. I saw the bag shift and shake, poked outward from the inside. I shifted into reverse and began to backtrack down the pitch-black road into the heart of the woods, but not before I saw that door creak open. Not before I saw that rotted, black arm with long, desiccated fingers reach out eagerly. I watched it yank that screeching delivery bag into the impossible space behind the door that should not exist.